My name is Sarona Rameka and I'm from New Zealand. I'm currently 41 years old, but when I was 37, I was pregnant with my first birth baby. So I was 37 weeks and I was a week out from giving birth. And the whole third trimester, I was having a lot of trouble breathing. And I kept going to the doctors and I went into A&E and they kept sending me home saying that it was just baby pressing on my diaphragm. And so because it was my first birth, I just thought I was being dramatic. And I did really struggle though. I was sleeping up, sitting up at night and just walking, like every day breathing, it would just give sharp pains into my chest. So I was 1 week out from being induced and I was crying in pain when our older kids came home. And the midwife, she said it wasn't normal. And so we went into A&E, same thing. Doctor said it was just baby, but baby's heart rate went up so high that the midwife insisted that I was admitted into hospital. So in there, they found a shadow and it was covering the left-hand side of my chest. So on my chest, my heart, and my left lung. And I mean, giving birth, it was a crazy time for us. We got transferred to 3 different hospitals. And over the next few days, it was just so scary. What they found was it was a group of tumours. The largest one measured nearly 17 centimetres, and together they were the size of a small rugby ball. And so we had to work out how to give birth, but that was fine. I mean, gave birth to a wee daughter, Pepe Leo, and it was just a miracle that she was able to survive and grow through that. And it was probably a great thing that I didn't know that it was cancer, because you can imagine we would have had to have made some really different decisions, I guess, around my pregnancy. And so when we came out, we did find out that it was malignant. And when we went to the oncologist, the only thing that I was offered was palliative chemotherapy. So there was nothing that they could do. They couldn't resect it because they'd be taking out half of my chest. And they said chemo wouldn't work. It was incurable. Now, when I was 26, it was quite a while before that, I had been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called myasthenia gravis. And I was on medication that suppressed my immune system to manage that. And what that did at its worst was my immune system would attack the nerves and the muscles. So if I wasn't on medication, my body would just stop working. The muscles would get weaker and weaker. It would affect my speech, my sight. I wasn't able to dress myself. And so after I gave birth to Pep and after I had the diagnosis, I had an appointment with my neurologist for the myasthenia. And it happened to come 3 days after my first oncologist appointment. And we almost cancelled it. I said to my husband, I don't know why we have to go when we've got cancer to think about. But for some reason, Vern was like, look, let's just go and we'll talk to Matt. So this is Dr. Matthew Phillips. And we went in there and Matt's talking to us about having another baby. And we're like, Matt, have you not seen? And we told him, and he just sat there and then he goes, well, what are you doing? And we said, well, we were only offered palliative chemo. We were thinking about it. I was preparing for it, but we were also looking at alternative medicines. And I just started an alkaline diet. And I had no idea what that was. I'd researched a bit, but all of the alkaline lists online, they were really contradictory. But I mean, it was all we had. And I had to do something so that I felt like I was in control. And Matt had been doing studies on fasting and the ketogenic diet with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's patients. He had read about it in cancer, but I don't think any of his cancer patients were quite keen to do the fasting. And so I had been praying to God that doors would open up for us and that doors would close for us. And I really felt that Matt was an open door and that he was answered prayer. And so straight away we said, yes, we're in. And he organised an appointment with a nutritionist that he'd worked with before, Deborah Murto, and we saw her the following week. And I remember she was on the phone talking to Matt, and she goes, "Yep, we'll start her fasting tomorrow." And then she goes, 7 days, no, 10 days. And I started laughing, and I was like, I looked at Vern, and I was like, she's not serious. And she was. And I just started, that nervous giggle. But I also knew that I had nothing to lose, but everything to lose. And so I started my first 10-day fast the day after I saw Deb, which was about a week after I first met Matt. During that time, I decided not to do the chemotherapy. And that's another blessing, because I had an oncologist who was brutally honest. And when we asked him questions about what was the chances of this working, he said none. And I think if he gave me a glimmer of hope, I would have taken it. But because there was no hope, and I was going home to a newborn baby, and I had 2 teenage kids also at home, if it didn't work, if the fasting and keto didn't work, I couldn't have my last months with them being sick. I had to really, I guess, walk by faith. And so we did. We put all our eggs in one basket, and we just said, we're going to do keto and fasting. In this whole journey, we had, say, 50 doctors that told us we were silly, or what are you doing, or it's irresponsible, or think of your child. And I only had, Vern and I, we just had our family to keep us grounded, the word of God, and the medical path from Matt. You have to block out the noise. I'd been on medication for 11 or 12 years with the myasthenia to suppress the immune system. But then all of a sudden, I needed the immune system to fight the cancer. And so when you fast, your immune system is on super boost. And so it just went on to super boost, and it made my disease, the myasthenia, relapse so much that I lost speech within a couple of days. So I ended up having IVIG, which is white blood cell transfusion, in hospital. And because Matt was unsure of what that would do to my fast, he added on another 2 days. So my first fast was 12 days. That was hard because people are saying you're crazy. What are you doing? And all we had was Matt and Deb saying, we know you're going through a rough time, but it is safe, because they had tested it on themselves. And we were just so blessed that Matt was watching us every step. Like, whenever I needed to be in hospital, he was in there with us. He was watching us. He was like, you can do this. And I'm like, I can do this. I couldn't speak, but I'm like, and so that pretty much went on for the first year, every time I fasted. And it was 7 days every maybe 6 weeks. But every time I fasted, the myasthenia relapsed, and I'd need a blood transfusion. Now, after 3 months, 6 months, we had a CT scan, and we found out that it shrank by 20%. And that was amazing, amazing. So something we were doing was right. And I was doing the fasting, the keto, and I was having the blood transfusions. So we thought, maybe it's the blood transfusions. Let's double them. So then I started having blood transfusions every 3 weeks. The next scan came back, and it had grown back to its original size. So we're like, okay, what the blood transfusions were doing, or seemingly, is that they were making my immune system a wee bit lazy. Yeah. And so it was a real balancing act with the myasthenia and with the cancer, right? If we gave the cancer too much room, it was going to kill me. If we didn't concentrate on the disease enough, that was going to kill me. So what we did was we doubled the fasts, and I ended up doing 7-day water fasts every month. And then that was working. So the next year, it didn't grow at all. And that's amazing, right? Because this is millions of cells, and it's their nature to grow. And And the myasthenia started coming under control every time I fasted. It wouldn't present as much. But I mean, if you look back now in hindsight, it's a visible marker of how amazing fasting is. The myasthenia would, rear its ugly head every time I fasted because it's showing you what the immune system is doing. So after 2 years, it was amazing because I was still alive, well past my, diagnosis, because there was one appointment I forgot to tell you at the start. My oncologist, when we went in, we said, don't give us a time. I can't have that subconsciously in my brain. So don't say anything. And it was our second visit. He said he was going on sabbatical and there'd be this other man looking after me and he'd see me when he got back. And then he goes, oh, well. So we know that it was, within 6 months. And we did later see on a report that it was life expectancy was less than 12 months. But we read that well after we knew that I was going to be okay. I had a rattle in my chest and I just thought, oh, maybe it's pneumonia again, because I had pneumonia in hospital. And so I went in to have an x-ray and they saw that it had shrunk by 96%. Couldn't believe it. A true miracle. And then I gave the fasting a wee bit of a break. I never stopped, but I went down to 4 or 5 days over the next year. And so I'd do 4 or 5 days every 1 or 2 months. And then last October, which is, a year ago, then we found out that it grew back to 20% of its original size. Nah, that was a shock when I heard that, because I didn't understand. I was still doing keto, I was still fasting, but I don't know, I prayed again. I'm like, it's okay. I still believe that I'm going to have full healing. And then we just changed the strategy again. And I went back to 7-day fasting every month. And that's what I'm doing now. And so in the past year, we haven't had any more growth since then. We're just going to continue on the path that we're on until it's gone. This is Pepe Leo.